Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. You are in the Hub CoWorks, and we appreciate the fact that you have joined us today. I'm Lyle Jepson, Executive Director of the Chamber and Economic Development. We operate the Hub CoWorks and do other things that you don't really care about, and we'll tell you later. So glad that you're here to hear from the Treasurer today. He has done a lot for our community here in Rutland. One of the things that I'm really pleased about is that he's very future focused. He's looking at not just today, but what will be happening 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Vermont Saves is part of that, and I know he's going to talk a little bit about that. But I also appreciate the fact that Mike recognizes that Rutland is part of Vermont and is here a lot, and we really appreciate that. The fact that he is working very closely with Chris Gomez at Heritage Family Credit Union with Roofs Over Vermont, the fact that he's working with Vermont Saves and coming up with a whole lot of other programs that will help Vermonters in the long term, not just the short term. Here today is Amy Spears, the Executive Director of the Vermont Chamber. She runs the Vermont Chamber, and we're very excited that Amy is here. She has a few words to say before Mike jumps on and talks to all of us. I want to thank all of you because almost every person in the room here that has a business is a member of the Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland region. We appreciate that support. We're glad you're here today. I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk a little bit about things that are going on in Vermont and her organization, and she'll introduce Mike. Amy.
Thank you, Lyle. Great to be here today. Amy Spear, I'm president of the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. I also live in Rutland County, so I'm glad to be, I'll say, in my home district today versus out on the road. So I do also acknowledge that Rutland is a key, important part of Vermont, and I'm always a champion throughout the state when I'm out on the road or talking to members. So really excited to be here today. If you're not familiar with the work of the Vermont Chamber, our mission is to advance the Vermont economy, and we do that through advocacy, community, and resources. And Vermont Saves really touches on all three of those pillars. So we have a foundation called the Vermont Futures Project that released an economic action plan earlier this year, and it really honed in on that Vermont's future depends on affordability. Can we all recognize we have a little bit of an affordability issue right now? Workforce strength, and opportunity for every community. So that vision is really driving the Vermont Economic Action Plan and serving as our roadmap for growing the workforce, which is critically important in our state, expanding housing, improving affordability, and building long-term prosperity. So Vermont Saves is a key example of a program that's strategy in action. Mike will talk a little bit more about what's happened in the first couple of months. $1 million. Incredible progress so far, but it's also looking at what's good for workers is also good for the Vermont economy. So financially secure employees are more likely to be productive, engaged, and stay here in Vermont. I think we have a new resident in the room. Carla, great to meet you. So supporting people means supporting businesses, and we really like to drive that message home. Programs like Vermont Saves strengthen the workforce, they improve affordability, and they create conditions for businesses to thrive, which is why I'm so excited to be here today and be a part of this messaging on Vermont Saves. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Treasurer Mike Pieciak.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I really appreciate you all being here. I always love coming to Rutland, as Lyle said. I always enjoy visiting with the folks down here. It reminds me a lot of where I grew up in Brattleboro. Just a lot of people that care a lot about their community and a lot of small, locally owned businesses and a good local economy. So looking forward to ways to partnering and making that better and stronger. And just want to recognize our elected leaders who are here, Senator David Weeks and Senator Brian Callamore, and also Representative Mary Howard, all of whom we work closely with in Montpelier and work closely with here in their hometown and home county to make sure we can do whatever we can from our office to support Rutland and strengthen your economy. So thank you three for being here. Thank you for your support for Vermont Saves, and thank you all as well for your support and being here this morning. The thing about Vermont Saves, and I'll get into the details in a minute, but I'll just first sort of talk about the why, what was the problem that we were trying to solve, what was the issue that was confronting Vermont and really the entire nation. And that was this challenge around retirement security, you know, how people feel heading toward retirement, both in terms of their anxiety, but also in terms of the dollars and cents that they have saved. Like, how are they actually going to sustain themselves in retirement? And how do they ensure that they have a dignified retirement, a retirement that's secure and as stable as when they were working? And when you look at every poll that comes out around retirement security and how people are feeling, the vast majority of people are very anxious about retirement. They're worried about outliving their money. They're worried about not having enough money. They're worried about unexpected costs that are going to come up in retirement. They're worried about leaving the workforce and then never really being able to get back into the workforce. This is sort of their opportunity to save as much as they can. But then also, as Amy said, they also worry about, how do I put money away when things are so unaffordable generally, but also in Vermont with a high cost of living. So all those challenges really compound, and it's not just that people are anxious about retirement. The data also showed that people don't save for retirement pretty much when they don't have access to an employer-based retirement plan. So if you have a 401k, you have a pension fund, you know, people are saving through their employer, they're putting money aside, maybe their employer is contributing also. But if you work for a small business or a nonprofit that just can't afford to provide a retirement plan, you know, the data shows those employees are really just not saving much or saving at all toward retirement. So when you look at those tens of thousands of Vermonters that work for that small business or that nonprofit that is not in a position, it's no fault of that business, it's expensive to run a 401k plan. You know, those folks are generally lower income, they're generally younger, more women than men, more overrepresented in terms of BIPOC community. So it's the exact kind of population we want to make sure we have resources to support and lift up. And right now, they're not saving anything toward retirement. At least they weren't before Vermont Saves came about. So that was the goal, was trying to provide that vehicle, that ease of retirement access to those tens of thousands of Vermonters that did not have any vehicle, did not have any opportunity for easy savings for their future. So Vermont Saves is a publicly administered retirement program. We administer it from our treasurer's office. We work with a company, Vestwell, that is our vendor. One of the critical things in getting this set up was that we partnered with the state of Colorado. So now the state of Colorado has created a little consortium of states that includes Maine and Delaware, recently Nevada and Minnesota. I think there's one state I'm forgetting, but those are the big ones. So those states working together have been able to leverage each other's size and population and scale and deliver this program more quickly. We're able to set it up more quickly and then able to set it up more efficiently as well. I think we were the state that set it up the fastest from passage to implementation. Becky Wasserman is here. She's our Director of Economic Empowerment that runs Vermont Saves, and it was her great work that helped us set that up so fast and so quickly. So thank you, Becky, for being here, and she'll be here to answer any questions that folks have as well. So we got it passed in 2023 from the legislature. It was a unanimous vote in the legislature, which we were very proud and happy to have, because we wanted this to be something that was a bipartisan initiative. Retirement security, retirement savings was important for us to, you know, have a broad support from policymakers. We got it operationalized in late 2024, so early adopters, and then it was sort of fully up and running in March of this year. And what we have seen in the early months is over 1,000 employers have signed up for Vermont Saves. The way that the law works and the mechanism works is that if you are an employer that doesn't offer retirement and you have 5 or more employees, then you're required to sign up for Vermont Saves. So there's a requirement. There's no cost to the employer, there's no fee for signing up, but that connection of making the employer sign up is really important to getting critical mass. And then as an employee of that employer, you are in the program unless you opt out of the program. That was also really important in terms of building critical mass. We also wanted to make sure those employees had abundant opportunity to get out of the program, both at the beginning, at the onset, and then after 30 days, they have a 30-day period. And then even after the 30 days, when the payroll deductions start coming out of their paycheck, the money goes into a safe money market account for 30 days so that they can decide, geez, wait, where'd that money go? What is this program all of a sudden? I want to now understand what this is because there's money coming out of my paycheck. And then even after the 60 days, at any point, people can opt out. And it goes into a Roth IRA, which was important to us as well, because the Roth will allow you to pull your money out, at least the principal, without any tax or penalty. So if you're an individual that 6 months later says, I loved this idea, but I now need that $2,000 I've saved because my car has broken down, or I need to move and need to get a security deposit, or whatever it is, you can access the money you put aside. So in that way, it serves as an emergency savings account, as a secondary resource, but really we want people saving and building for the future. So Amy mentioned some of the numbers that we have had: 1,000 employers, 4,200 savers so far, which is great. We'd like to see that number. We think we've made great progress in that regard. We want to see more people in the program. That's why we're doing this tour, to talk about it and explain it. But of those 4,200 people that have saved, in June they crossed $1 million collectively saved. Now it's about $2.5 million collectively saved. On that pace that we're on, hopefully by the end of the year it's going to be $5 million collectively saved. And it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing as more people come in, as more contributions are going in, and as the investments themselves grow. So we have millions and millions of dollars that people are now saving for their future that they were not saving before. And one of the things I think is so great about who is saving and what does it look like is when you look at the demographics of that 4,200 people, 55% of them, 55% are under the age of 40, and 30% are under the age of 30. So when you look at the line graph of where do people sort of bucket up age by age, from age 18 all the way to age 80, I think there are a few people in their older years that are still saving through Vermont Saves. They couple up into the 20s. You just see it stand out so dramatically. And that's great because that's part of the population we knew was underserved, young people that maybe work in a restaurant, maybe work for retail, maybe just work in a nonprofit sector. Maybe it's their long-term occupation. Maybe they're just doing this a few years out of school until they figure out what they want to do with their lives. But regardless, they now have access to retirement and they're actually saving. And a few $100s a month, which is the average that we're seeing in terms of people saving, about $156 a month. That $156 a month for someone that's 22 years old or 23 years old, that's going to grow to $500,000, $600,000 when they're closer to retirement age, assuming they don't put any more in as their income goes up, and assuming they don't get a 401k and some other additional benefit along the way. But it just shows that impact of getting people saving early, and when time is on their side, it really can work for their benefit. So what does this look like if we fast forward it? Our hope is that we'll have more people in Vermont that have resources when they're approaching retirement. They can think of it as that multiple stool of having Social Security, having your retirement savings, and then having some sort of separate savings outside of a retirement vehicle to help you withstand all of the financial pressures that come with retirement. People that have more security, more dignity in retirement, people that are afford to be able to retire in Vermont, people that have more discretionary income in their retirement years to help the economy, people that are living more independently so they don't have to depend on state benefits, state resources, federal resources. All of those things are to the benefit of the state, the benefit to taxpayers, and the benefit of individuals that are saving in the program as well. So great start. We look at ourselves relative to some of the other states that have established this program. We were maybe like the 7th or 8th state when we passed it. There are now about 20 states that have a similar program, an automatic saving, Roth IRA type saving program. We are doing really well in terms of how fast people are coming into Vermont Saves, but we want to keep the momentum up. We want to get those numbers higher, because the quicker we can do that, the more the program will become self-sustaining. And then once it becomes self-sustaining, it's really off and running and established, for the future without requiring state support. So we want to spread the word here. If you have individuals that you think would be interested, small businesses that don't know about this, we've done our best to reach out to small businesses through partnerships with the Labor Department to notify people of this requirement. We want it to be a carrot, not a stick. We want to keep telling people about the benefits of this as an employer, that it's a benefit you can offer your employees. They view it as that benefit. I heard one person from another state described the moment that they were offered this similar savings program, and they said, for the first time, I feel like I have a real job because I'm getting this benefit, this retirement benefit that I never got before. So I think it is a real value to a small employer, to a nonprofit, to be able to offer this to their employees, and again, at no cost to the employer. So we're trying to spread the word on that. We're trying to make sure we highlight the benefits that have already been achieved and the benefits of participating in the program more broadly for the business, for their employees, and then for Vermont and the economy at large as well. So I'm happy to take any questions that folks have about Vermont Saves. Also happy to talk about anything else that's going on in our office or in Vermont that you might have interest in as well.
Yeah, my Jim Hat, County Wellington. You said $156 a week, $650,000, whatever, at the end of 30 years. What percentage are you using?
Like in terms of the growth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just like a 7% standard, you know, historic stock market.
And then I've got two questions after that. So then the next one is, what funds are they allowed to get put into in the Roth IRA?
Yeah, so there is a suite of target date funds that are offered to folks. You know, there's a delicate balance between offering too little and too much. You know, too little doesn't provide enough options and choice for people depending on their circumstance, but it's been shown that too much also kind of makes people paralyzed. You know, it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant, you look at that menu and you're like, oh my God.
So you're using like a Prudential or something like that?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
That, whatever it is. Target rate.
BlackRock and State Street.
Yeah, BlackRock and State Street,
Okay.
these target date funds.
And then my last question is really not a question, it's kind of an idea that with the state of Vermont having all the housing problems that we're having and everything else, has the state thought of making one of the investment things available to put into for housing within the state is using those funds to put out to housing to get somewhere around the 6 to 8% range?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting idea. I mean, whether it's our pension funds, whether we had another idea that was called baby bonds, and that would require holding money for the long term for investment, whether it's a program so we can invest our money locally, is something I'm interested in. It comes with a lot of, you know, it comes with a lot of management administration, so you gotta make sure it's efficient. But it's a great idea, and housing is one of those areas where you probably could get the market return that you need to make it worthwhile.
That's where I'm going with it, just throwing it out there as an idea for
one of the
folks
things
up in Montpelier to maybe have a little, allow somebody might set that down in Rutland County. Let's look at it, that's all.
And one thing we've done in our office, you know, on housing is, you know, we have this program, 10% Vermont, that, you know, been a little bit sleepy before we came in the office, and we expanded it substantially and dedicated it toward housing. So it allows us to invest up to 10% of basically the cash that we're managing in the state into economic development. And we picked housing as the thing that would unlock the most economic benefit. So we've invested $84 million to date. Another $20 million is out for RFP right now to support housing all across Vermont, including the program that was mentioned, Roofs Over Rutland, that is an $8 million partnership with Heritage Family Treasury to invest in Rutland for housing that is either offline, that will come back online, or new housing conversions of commercial units to housing units. But that program was done at a below market interest rate to help spur the creation of housing. A little bit different than what you're talking about, but just an example of how we're using the state's money created.
I get it, I'm just saying that if you have 1,000 people that are already up to $2 million or whatever, imagine if you had 40,000 and there's $250 million into this fund, but people start saying, I want to put 10% of my savings into this housing thing, and now all of a sudden you have $25 million coming out to go.
Yeah,
good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
This is structured as a Roth IRA, so we already offer 401k, so we can offer this as additional for people who want to vote, right?
So we already offer this plan, and you would be exempt from this program.
But I'm exempt, but could I offer it, because if it's a Roth IRA, right, you can do both. You can do a 401k and a Roth IRA.
And anybody on their own, in that situation, your employees on their own, any Vermonter could sign up to get a Roth IRA for Vermont Saves, and the deductions would just be made through.
I think you should look into allowing employers that already have a 401k to be able to sign up as well, especially if it's a Roth IRA, because you can offer that benefit to the ones that do want to take care of it, especially if they know they have the option that it's a savings account that is going to generate some investment for them, but if they have something tragic that happens, they have access to those funds, but where in a 401k they don't. And I'm pretty sure I got it. Even if they put $50 every 2 weeks or whatever it is, right? It's still money that goes in there, so it would be, that would be good feedback.
Part of our,
that I would give for that.
that's a great point, and part of the, when we worked to set it up, we wanted to be as broad and inclusive as possible. There are some legal limitations that we had to sort of work through, and now that it's established and set up, we want to add as many, want to make sure it's as inclusive as possible. So something we can continue to look at.
Yeah, because payroll deducting is really,
It's the key.
It's the key, right? If you take $50 out of your paycheck, and you're gonna miss it the first couple of weeks, then it sort of becomes a norm. When you have to go into your savings or your checking account and actually do that, and it sort of defeats the purpose.
And in terms of the reason for doing the program and the benefits we saw in other states, it's the exact, that's the linchpin, right? It's to have the employer participate, it's to have it be opt out, you're in, and then that linchpin of having the automatic payroll deduction. Yeah.
As a follow-up, when someone is able to take the money out, is it similar where now you have to pay it back with interest, or is it?
No, it's
your
your
money
money.
is now yours, there's no caveat.
That's right.
You have to pay it back.
Yeah, it's not like, if you have a 401k and you take a loan out, all of that sort of thing, paying it back with interest. This is just you taking withdrawal. There's no age requirement, there's no income requirement, there's no exemption like you find your first house. The only distinction is if you put $100 in and you earn $10, you can take that $100 out, but that $10 that you earned, that has to stay in, or is subject to interest or penalty to take it out early.
That would be nice to have, because we have obviously technicians and stuff like that are concerned about the 401k program not having access to it, but that I think would increase participation.
Yeah.
Even with employers that offer it.
Yeah, if you open it up to employers that even offer it, but you get a payroll reduction, I think you would see a significant increase in the amount of workforce.
But I can sell that.
That will participate in. I have other follow-up questions, but they're not
Oh,
related.
yeah.
They're not related to the topic at hand.
But I saw this hand right here first, we'll go over it.
Yeah, my question was why the vendor Best Law, why were they selected over another vendor, or were they the ones that kind of presented with the benefits of using that?
Yeah, so Bestwell was the vendor that other states have used. Well, including Colorado, but California, Oregon, Illinois were some of the early adopters of this kind of program. So we partnered with Colorado, who had Bestwell as their vendor, and that was part of the benefit is that we got access to Bestwell. We likely wouldn't have had access at our scale and our size to any other vendor that could have set this up in a stable and operational way. So we felt very fortunate to have that, but it ended up being because we partnered with Colorado that we went with Bestwell.
And I'll just add, there are actually only 2 vendors in the country that provide the state auto IRA program administration. So Investwell is the one. There's only 2 states that use the other one.
So it was one we could set up the most efficiently, the most experience. Did you have a question?
I was just going to echo support. So I work for B&A Office, and I am enrolled in our 401k program. I also have a Roth IRA with a separate bank, but we have a number of per diem clinicians, and so I would imagine similarly that they would be, I don't know what the opportunities are, fundraising, not finance, but I would imagine that they are not eligible for that program,
Yeah.
so being able to invest, and we even have, programs within our organization that support our employees, because we know that we have employees that are struggling financially. And so knowing that's within our own community, our own organization, I think it would be beneficial for all.
Yeah.
There's that option for those employers that do opt that program to also extend this to employees that might not be eligible.
No doubt. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Carla?
I'm going to piggyback on what she's talking about, because I'm doing a little pro bono consulting for some of the newer, very small businesses, some here in town who are here today. And they don't understand the difference between a 1099 employee and 1099 non-employee and an employee. And I'm seeing that they're not even 1099, some of these people, they don't even understand the $600 rule.
Yeah.
And there are many businesses that should be having these employees and should be, I got nailed in California, and it's a really important thing. And how do we go about educating these businesses so they know these are employees, not 1099 people? And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same rules here. There are 20 questions you ask: who sets your hours, who provides your uniforms, what equipment
Yeah.
you use, and a lot of them are just doing, they're not even sending 1099s, and I'm going, no, need to send 1099s, and some of these people need to be employees, otherwise.
No doubt.
So how do you approach that
Yeah.
and educate these people?
You know, so there was, leading up to and still continues to be, a lot of education that's provided through Vestwell. Is one of the benefits of having them. You know, on our website, the Vermont Saves website, it's really kind of a joint website that's branded as Vermont Saves. And they provide all of those Q&As, walking people through the requirements, walking people through Vermont Saves and how it works. There's webinars that were hosted, and they continue to have them every month, I think, for new employers. So you can continue to get both sort of reading material on your own, but also live webinars and live Q&A that you can ask Vestwell experts. So we, you know, made a push to make sure employers know about that as well. There's also information for employees, like for individual savers, but trying to make sure there's those resources for employers is important.
But if they're not employees and the employer or the business owner is considering them 1099 workers, how do you approach that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
It's really tough for me.
You know, them hopefully knowing that they're an employer and having gotten this outreach from us that Vermont Saves is something that we've identified that we think they're required to sign up for, and having the information about going to the website and information laid out in that communication, hopefully that triggers them to go and learn more. And there is a lot of abundant information there for them, but it does require them to have the concept that they need to do something in the first place.
Yeah, I'm going to work with a few different people on this. I think we need to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes, oh, sorry. Yeah.
And Representative Howard, I've only talked to a couple of people who have opted out of the program. And one of the issues this particular person alerted to was the management fees that are deducted. And I think he got skewed because he thought he was investing in the stock market.
Right.
And that he would have a capital loss.
Right, right.
But then does the state subsidize the management fees or is his individual account subject to the BlackRock management fees of, I thought you said, target date funds?
Yeah. So the way that the program is funded is through those fees. It's not, the hope is that we're in a position where it's not required to have any additional state support, and there's no support from the employer. But just like you would have in a 401k, that the fee would be the thing that propels it in terms of sustainability. So there are two fees that are charged. One is an asset under management fee. I think it's 0.3%, which a 401k is probably usually 0.7 or 0.8, maybe something like that. So it's low fee. But then there's another one-time fee, or an annual fee at one time, that's charged as a straight dollar amount, $25. It's broken out quarterly, so you don't put $25 in, then it gets taken out immediately. And that goes to pay for the vendor and also us and Becky's time and things like that. So it's relative, there are fees, but they're low cost relative to what you would get in another type of retirement program. And we try to balance that in terms of spreading them out throughout the year, so you're not getting your first deduction, taken away by fees. But that's the thing that does support it and make it sustainable.
Right, but a quarterly.
Exactly.
A quarterly quarter, but $25 annually. So
Yeah.
$650 quarterly.
Right, exactly.
Plus the
Asset under management fee. 3.3%. Yeah.
0.3%.
Yeah, exactly right. And it is, and they're target date funds. Like there's a money market fund, if somebody wanted to be conservative, but they are target date funds based on your expected retirement date. So if you're retiring in 10 years, that's going to be weighted toward away from equities, away from the stock market. If you're retiring in 50 years, it's going to be weighted toward the stock market. So there is that opportunity. You want to be, that individual would want to be careful about which target date they're putting themselves into, because they are exposed to the stock market through those target date funds.
But he has to opt, if he does nothing He'll
He'd be
get-
in.
He'll get put into
Yeah.
a nominal. So if he's born in year to end in 3, he'd be
Right.
a 0 and 5, unless he decided to go conservative and
Yeah.
go to
If he,
-5.
let's say he's retiring in 25 years based on his age, like, and we're assuming he's gonna retire at age 67, and he does nothing, he'll be in the program, they'll pull the payroll deduction out, it'll sit in the conservative money market account for another 30 days. If nothing is done, then at day 60, they'll invest it in the 25-year target date fund, something that closely aligns with his age and expected retirement date. And at any time, he could go in and make that less aggressive, more aggressive, or stop contributing or pull the money out altogether.
I don't know what the individual got for literature. He just opted out.
Yeah. Well, you know, not everybody, it's being honest about, can people afford to save for retirement? It's one of the challenges, right? And I think if maybe you can find, once you start putting a little bit away, that you can make a go of it, but people are living paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth, so it's,
But can you reduce the percentage, or is it?
We'd love to.
5%?
say it again.
No, can he reduce, it's a standard 5%. If he
Oh,
does
yeah.
nothing,
Sorry.
he's in for 5%.
That also is flexible, so that's the default. But you can go to 1%, you go 2%, 3%, you go higher if you want. So 5% is the payroll deduction that we're talking about. And that is also flexible. You control that. There are defaults, but you also control how much is going in.
It was only one constituent.
Yeah.
It was a grunt. I don't think he understood
Right.
the investment portion.
Well, it's scary. I mean, people that have never invested in the stock market, it's like, what is this? I mean, it's foreign to them, it's new to them. So, you know, it's a way, you know, I view this program obviously as a savings program or a retirement program, but it's also sort of an active financial literacy program or financial education program. So hopefully, you know, they can feel, over time, they'll feel more comfortable. Maybe they'll talk to their colleagues that are investing and encourage them to participate. Because you can also join at any time too. It's, even if you opt
You
out.
can read, if you opt out, you
Yeah.
can opt in.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what the percentage of employers that have been missed?
Yeah.
In exposure to this?
Yeah, so we have, you know, because it's 5 or more, and we have the ability to make it lower. We wanted to go with 5 or more because that is what a number of other states did as their initial launch. You know, we're now up and running. I feel like we could easily sustain moving it lower and bringing on more people. So that's something we'll think about. But in terms of who we got from the Labor Department, you know, we got about 9,000 names of businesses that had 5 or more in Vermont. We then matched that against the IRS database for people that have to file paperwork relating to their 401k. So we knew that they were exempt, so they didn't get a communication from us. They went into the exempt category. And then the 7,000 or so businesses, they did get, you know, communication from us. I think about, you know, 3,000 of them came back and said, no, we have a retirement plan. You know, we're actually exempt even though you didn't have us on the exempt list. The remaining, you know, 3,000, 3,500, over 1,000 have signed up. But that means there's still like 2,000, 2,500 businesses that we haven't heard from. And that's why we want to do this tour and get the word out, because they may be exempt, but they may be required to sign up, and we want to make sure that they have information about that.
Are they full-time employee count or full-time equivalent employee count?
Full-time equivalent, right?
Actually, part-time, seasonal, and temporary employees are eligible for the program.
Are eligible.
Are eligible if they work 500 hours or more in a calendar year. So we, and that's also something we might look at, just to whether or not that number makes sense, and then whether it should just be any employee that works.
An employer may move into
5, yeah.
into the 5 or more, or will an employer resist expanding his employee base
Yeah.
because he wants to avoid this? It's
I-
something that he's scared of.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a good question. I mean, the reason I don't think so is because I think, you know, this is a helpful benefit. I think it's a relatively minor part of a business decision about hiring somebody. But I think it's only to the benefit of the employer. It is more administrative work, but Vest, well, you know, we went through it as a treasurer's office. I said, early on in the program, I said, to Vestwell, can you, even before it was passed in the legislature, we said, can you walk it through as if I were an employer trying to sign up our office? And it was really just like 4 easy steps, and it took, you know, I asked a lot of questions, so it took us like 15 or 20 minutes. They were like, on average, people sign up in, I don't know, it was like minutes. Like, I was pretty surprised.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah, wow.
May I change the subject?
Yeah.
slightly? Not that this isn't important, but I also know that you have been working on a transition task force.
Yeah.
And within the last 8 months, there's been some mild economic uncertainty out there. And maybe folks would like to hear a little bit about the results of that task force and anything the state can do to help keep the wage a little bit not as high and low.
Yeah, no doubt. So Lyle's talking about, basically the transition that occurred in January, new president, new administration. And last time around, when I was in state government during the first Trump administration, I just found us being proactive and coordinated led to better decision making. We weren't caught off guard as much. We were planning ahead. We were able to take advantage of opportunities, avoid challenges and risk. And when we didn't do that, I found that we got blindsided sometimes. So that was our goal in setting up this task force, was trying to stay ahead of fast changing federal policy, and it did change fast and it changed more quickly than even the last time, so that was glad that we had sort of a team of people throughout the state that had different types of experience. And we just finished a report that had 11 recommendations, but the overall recommendation, the overall point that we wanted to make was the relationship between any state, the relationship between Vermont and the federal government, I think has changed probably permanently in some ways. Like, it doesn't matter who's president in 2029 or beyond. The way that the federal government thinks about and supports states has changed, and we need to recognize that reality. We get 37% of our funding, our budget from the federal government. There's like $700 or $800 million in federal grants that come directly to nonprofits in Vermont. On top of that, $3 billion that comes in the way of the state budget. The bill that was passed in the last couple of months will reduce the amount of money we get from the federal government. So my point is we have to become more financially independent. We have to have a stronger economy. We have to bring in more resources, more revenues. We have to be able to take care of the people that we want to take care of through our own means. It's going to mean investing in housing and making it easier to build housing, easier for economic development to occur in Vermont. And some of these things are things that we've resisted over the years and the decades because we want to keep Vermont Vermont. We want our communities to be how they are. We want our natural beauty to be preserved. We want outdoor recreation opportunities to still be there. But I don't think those things, I fundamentally don't believe those things are in conflict with each other. I think we can continue to grow, we can continue to build, we can build a stronger economy that makes more things here in Vermont, that brings in more wealth and value and money to our state to make our state a wealthier state, and not lose out on the beautiful communities that we have, the beautiful natural resources that we have in our outdoor recreational opportunities. So that over all of the 11, we made 11 recommendations, but the biggest overarching point was we need to become more independent economically and not be as reliant on the federal government, because just don't think it will be there in the same way in the future.
So that was actually my follow-up for the first. So we're investing all this money in housing. What are we doing to try to make sure that these things are actually working right? How are these things moving to like 250?
Yeah.
Right. We're investing $14.5 million to build a facility for our Subaru dealership.
Nice.
It's been 2.5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well,
So 2.5 years.
What did it start at? What does it cost now?
It started at 8 million.
Yeah.
We're at 14, right? And it's been 2.5 years. I have no permit. I have a hearing in 2 weeks, right? And I got a bill for $70,000 just to appear in front of a board committee and people that have literally zero idea on what they're doing. So we're investing all this money in housing and throwing money into all these things, but if we can't get permits and if we can't do all this other stuff, I mean, I live in Manchester, right? There's a housing project that's been proposed in Manchester and nobody will touch it because you just can't get it through.
No.
You can't even bid it because it's going to take 7 years for you to get permits. This is insanity, right? I like clean air, I like clean water, I like natural beauty, I like all that other stuff, but if we don't have employment and business in this state, right, like the governor says, we don't have a tax problem in this state, we have a taxpayer problem.
Yeah, we don't have taxpayers. Yeah.
Right? But if we can, I live here and I have 2 businesses here and it's taken me 2.5 years to try to put a shovel on the ground before I even got to our permitting process. This makes no sense. And I built buildings in Massachusetts and this makes Massachusetts look like Florida.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's absolutely It's insanity, right? It's insanity, and there is zero accountability. And yes, we want to protect our resources, but without jobs, our kids are going to continue to be the #1 expert of the state.
No doubt. So we're in this situation, just overall, when you think about Vermont, right? Because you hear a lot about people, I would say people are afraid of change, right? When you think about our state, like what is the biggest issue we have to confront? I would say, when you talk about like a policy issue, it's housing. But when you talk about like the biggest actual issue, it's actually change, I think. Like things changing, people not wanting things to change. My point on that is always, like nothing is in sort of a constant state, whether it's you as a person, whether it's your business, whether it's a state or a community, things are always changing. And right now, they're not changing for the better. We have, homelessness has tripled over the last 10 years in Vermont. Our property taxes have continued to go up. Our healthcare costs have doubled in the last 5 years when the national average has been flat. And even places like New Hampshire and Maine that are older than us have stayed relatively low. So it's not like it's our demographics that is driving that alone. We've seen that in Vermont, you have the highest percentage of your income going to childcare than any place in the country. Housing costs, are obviously high. Inflation in 2023, 2024 was the highest in the country for Vermont, driven by increase in housing prices being the primary driver of inflation. So things are changing right now in Vermont. They're changing for the worse. They're making it less affordable, harder for people to stay here, harder for young people to stay here. When you look at the demographic data, like we have had people move to Vermont. We've had higher income people move to Vermont. Between 2019 and 2022, the number of tax filers earning $100,000 or more grew by 30%. It was like 56,000, 59,000. It went up to 76,000, 17,000 more people that were filing tax returns in Vermont over $100,000 adjusted gross income. But on the lower end of the scale, we lost people. We lost 3,000 low-wage workers. So I think that really puts the target on the needs that we need to be focusing on, working class, middle class Vermonters and their affordability in the state. Affordability is an issue for everybody, but really for those middle class, working class people. And if you don't have that workforce, nurses, teachers, firefighters, who's educating your kids, who's saving you when your house is on fire, you're falling down, who's helping you get your medical care. So all of a sudden, these folks that have moved to Vermont, they've driven up, in a good way, our tax revenue. We have more income tax because they're higher income earners. But all of a sudden, they're going to say, geez, my favorite restaurant isn't open when I want it to be. Or that coffee shop is never open and closed. I can't get into Rutland Regional Hospital because there's not enough doctors. And they're going to think about somewhere else. So I think we're in this non-virtuous cycle that we have to break out of. But change is the thing that we need to confront and get a little uncomfortable.
Change is the only thing that is constant, really.
Yeah, exactly right.
Which is weird that people are afraid.
Oh, I think we have, what time do we have?
I'm sorry to cut off. I think we have time for maybe one more question.
All right, sorry.
Then we
I have
just,
too long
minutes.
on my answers. Just the last thing on that point, like I feel what you're saying because the money that I'm talking about that we've invested in housing, there was one project in the state that was about 26 units of affordable housing in a town that needs it, near the interstate, near to communities that have a lot of jobs. It made all the sense in the world. The project went through and got its permit, and then it was appealed. And it was appealed for like 18 months of a lot of uncertainty. It was down in southern Vermont. But that 18 months was during this period where costs were going up and interest rates were going up. And when they finally were able to build and break ground, they needed almost $2 million more to be able to build that project. And they couldn't finance it at the higher interest rates. It wouldn't pencil out.
Yeah.
So our money came in to help that project go forward, and that's great. But I'd much rather our money have gone to a completely new project, and that one was being able to
build
build
another 20 houses.
Yeah, exactly.
If we don't fix that issue, you can throw $1 billion into it. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
If businesses are not it's absolutely 100% insanity.
Yeah.
I mean, if my Subaru building was in New Hampshire, I would have been selling cars out of it. They haven't even broken ground.
Mike, I'm going to jump on the Oliver Subaru bandwagon here and say there are other projects out there, and I know this isn't your department necessarily, but there are other projects out there in Rutland County that are not happening because of Act 250. And it's not Act 250 necessarily, it's the people not doing what they need to do to get answers back to people.
You're saying like it's the staffing, like they see it as the department not being fast enough and such.
So not happening fast enough at all. And then when you're going back to your original point, which is we need to strengthen our economy and become more independent.
Yes,
We can do that,
we can.
but we have to stop stopping ourselves from doing that.
It's holding us back.
Right.
We said we had time for one more question. I know Senator Weeks had his hand up. You wanted to first?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I just, on that point, I just was wondering if there's an update on activity from the state and what they're doing to kind of work with that process.
So there's a point that was made about sort of land use changes, right? So 2 years ago, basically the things that have happened in Vermont in terms of land use are 2 years ago, we eliminated single-family zoning in the state so that you could build a duplex by right, and then depending on the infrastructure, a triplex or a quadplex by right. So that is now out in the law, and some towns are, there's some things they have to do to implement it. Some are moving faster than others. And then on the Act 250, there were sort of these temporary exemptions moving toward a tier system with the maps describing where the tiers are, and that process is still underway. The maps I don't think have been finalized yet. So that's, these things take a little time. I think those are two really important land use changes. I think the third one, which I referenced, is appeals and trying to make sure that we have there needs to be process, and there is process, but then when there's a decision, you need to move on, you need to build. And obviously, if it's somebody that's directly impacted, it's the next door neighbor, it's, that's a different thing. But when it's just the community members that think, oh, we don't want our community to have affordable housing. We don't think, we're already too big of a community, right?
It is.
Yeah, and that's when it becomes a challenge. Well, I really appreciate you all being here and your engagement and your time and listening a little bit about Vermont Saves. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to our office. This is how we'll spread the word when it comes to getting more people signed up and more businesses signed up. So thank you, and thank you to Lyle and the Chamber for hosting us and having us here in the Hub. It's always a pleasure to partner with you, and you're just doing a great job down here, so keep it up.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.